Captain Mara Hayes stood at the helm of the Deep Space Explorer Vanguard, her sharp gaze fixed on the viewport. The blackness beyond was punctuated only by distant stars, cold and indifferent. But today, the void had whispered back. "Captain, we're picking up a signal," said Dr. Elias Grant, his voice tight with a mix of excitement and concern. His fingers danced across the console, isolating the transmission. "It's unlike anything I've seen." Hayes turned, her expression unreadable. Dr. Grant was a brilliant linguist, though his obsession with the unknown often led him into trouble. She had long since learned to balance his zeal with her own brand of caution. "Origin?" she asked, her voice steady. Grant hesitated, glancing up from his screen. "It's coming from Sector K-21. Uncharted space. No known colonies, no active beacons, just void." A murmur rippled through the bridge crew. K-21 was a dead zone, a graveyard of ships that ventured too far into the unknown. Hayes felt a familiar tension coil in her chest. She knew the risks, but she also knew her duty. "Play it," she ordered. The bridge fell silent as the transmission crackled to life. At first, it was just static, a hiss of interference. Then, a low, resonant hum filled the air, followed by a series of sharp, rhythmic pulses. The sound was both alien and haunting, sending a chill down the spines of everyone present. "It's a distress signal," Grant whispered, eyes wide. "But the language, it's completely unfamiliar." Hayes frowned, her mind racing. A distress call from an unknown source in a region where no ship had returned. It was a gamble, and not one she would normally take. But something in that signal, in the way it resonated through the ship's speakers, called to her instincts. "Lieutenant," she said, addressing her second-in-command, "plot a course to Sector K-21. Prepare for immediate departure." The lieutenant's eyes widened, but he obeyed without question. The crew moved with a practiced efficiency, though the tension was palpable. This wasn't just another mission, it felt like a descent into the abyss. "Captain, I must advise caution," Grant said, his voice low but urgent. "There's no telling what we'll find out there. The signal could be a trap, a remnant of a long-dead civilization, or something far worse." "I know, Doctor," Hayes replied, her tone clipped but not unkind. "But if there's a chance someone needs our help, we have to investigate." Grant nodded, though doubt lingered in his eyes. He was a man driven by curiosity, but even he recognized the dangers of the unknown. Yet, that same curiosity burned within him, urging him to follow the signal, to uncover its secrets. As the Vanguard's engines roared to life, the ship shuddered, cutting through the void toward the ominous coordinates. Hayes stood tall, her resolve unshaken, but the weight of the decision pressed on her shoulders. Every captain knew the cost of leadership, the fine line between bravery and folly. The stars blurred into streaks of light as they entered faster than light travel, the ship hurtling toward the mystery that awaited in the darkness. The signal pulsed steadily, a heartbeat in the void, calling them deeper into the unknown. The Vanguard drifted through the black void of Sector K-21, its engines humming softly as it approached the source of the mysterious signal. The darkness here was different, thicker, almost tangible, as if it had swallowed the light whole. Captain Mara Hayes surveyed the dimly lit bridge, her crew working in tense silence. Every flicker on the monitors, every blip on the radar, felt like a harbinger of something unseen. "Status report," Hayes ordered, her voice breaking the quiet. Lieutenant Connor, her second-in-command, glanced up from his console. "All systems nominal, Captain. We're holding steady, but the readings are strange. It's like the space around us is warping. Gravity anomalies, electromagnetic fluctuations, nothing we've encountered before." "Could it be interference from the signal?" Hayes asked, her mind racing through possibilities. "Possible," Connor replied, though the uncertainty in his voice was clear. "But it's unlike anything our instruments are calibrated for." Dr. Elias Grant, seated nearby, was furiously typing on his portable terminal, his brow furrowed in concentration. He had been analyzing the signal nonstop since their departure, his curiosity burning like a fire that refused to be quenched. Now he looked up, his expression grave. Captain, I've managed to decode a portion of the transmission. It's a warning. It repeats over and over, do not proceed. Death awaits beyond this point. A chill settled over the bridge, palpable even through the sterile atmosphere of the ship. Hayes locked eyes with Grant, her resolve hardening. Do you believe it's a genuine threat, or just a deterrent? Grant shook his head, uncertainty clouding his gaze. I can't be sure. But the signal isn't recent. It's been echoing through space for centuries, maybe longer. Whatever sent it might be long gone, or it could be waiting. Captain, incoming! Connor's voice cut through the tension, drawing everyone's attention to the main screen. A faint outline appeared, slowly resolving into the shape of a massive, derelict vessel drifting aimlessly in the void. The ship was ancient, its hull scarred and corroded by time. No lights flickered, no energy signatures pulsed, just the cold, silent remains of a civilization lost to the stars. Is that where the signal is originating? Hayes asked, her eyes narrowing. Yes, Captain, Connor confirmed. It's coming from that ship. Hayes studied the derelict, her instincts screaming that something was wrong. Lieutenant, scan for life signs or any active systems. Connor's fingers flew over the controls as he initiated the scan. A tense silence fell over the bridge, broken only by the quiet hum of the ship's engines. Finally, the results flashed on the screen. No life signs detected. The ship's systems are either dead or dormant. Hayes' gut twisted. The message had been clear, death awaited beyond this point. But was it a relic of the past, or a warning that still held power? Prepare an away team. We're boarding that ship. Are you sure that's wise, Captain? Grant asked, his voice tinged with apprehension. We don't know what we're walking into. No, we don't, Hayes admitted, her gaze steely. But we came here for answers, and we're not leaving without them. The team suited up in the hangar, the air thick with unspoken tension. As the boarding craft launched toward the derelict, the Vanguard receded into the distance, becoming a distant speck in the void. Hayes led the way, her every sense on high alert. The derelict loomed before them, a silent behemoth that seemed to swallow the light around it. As they docked and entered the ship, the air grew colder, the darkness more oppressive. The walls were lined with strange, indecipherable markings, and the corridors stretched on endlessly, as if the ship had no end. Suddenly, the lights flickered. A low hum echoed through the walls, followed by a faint, distant sound, a whisper, or perhaps a cry, carried through the darkened halls. The team froze, fear tightening its grip on their throats. Captain! Grant's voice trembled as he stared into the shadows. We're not alone. Hayes tightened her grip on her weapon, her heart pounding in her chest. Stay sharp. Whatever's here, we face it together. The darkness ahead seemed to deepen, as if it were a living thing, waiting to consume them whole. And as they moved deeper into the derelict, the whispered warning from the signal echoed in their minds, more ominous than ever. *, do not proceed. Death awaits beyond this point. *. The oppressive silence inside the derelict ship was more unnerving than the void outside. Captain Mara Hayes led the team deeper into the vessel, each step echoing through the cold, metallic corridors. The walls, covered in strange, alien symbols, seemed to close in on them as they ventured further. The dim light from their helmets cast eerie shadows, playing tricks on their eyes. Dr. Elias Grant, ever the curious academic, ran a gloved hand over the strange markings. These symbols, they're a language, he murmured, half to himself. But nothing like I've ever seen. It's ancient, and yet, advanced. Keep your focus, Doctor, Hayes said, her voice tight. We're here to find the source of that signal, not decipher ancient texts. Grant nodded, but his gaze lingered on the symbols as if they were the key to a mystery only he could solve. The rest of the team moved cautiously, weapons drawn, senses heightened. Lieutenant Connor kept a vigilant eye on the scanner, though its readings were frustratingly vague. The ship's internal systems seemed to be malfunctioning, or perhaps something more sinister was at play. The corridor opened into a vast chamber, the ceiling stretching high above them, lost in shadow. In the center stood a massive, dormant machine, its design completely alien, an intricate web of metal and crystal, with tendrils extending into the walls and floor. It hummed faintly, the sound just on the edge of perception, as if waiting for a signal to awaken. "This must be it," Hayes said, stepping closer. "The source of the transmission." Grant approached cautiously, his eyes wide with awe. "It's some kind of beacon," he theorized, running his scanner over the device. "But it's more than just a transmitter. It's absorbing energy, but from where?" Before Hayes could respond, the lights flickered again, plunging the room into near darkness. The team tensed, weapons raised. The air grew colder, the temperature dropping rapidly as their breath turned to mist. "Captain, I'm picking up movement," Connor reported, his voice strained. "But it's erratic. Like it's everywhere and nowhere at once." Hayes turned slowly, scanning the shadows. "Stay close. We don't know what we're dealing with." A sudden, sharp noise pierced the silence, a scraping sound, like metal dragging across metal. It echoed through the chamber, sending a shiver down their spines. The team spun toward the source, only to see nothing but darkness. The sound came again, this time from above. They looked up, but the ceiling was lost in shadow. "Whoever, or whatever, is here, it's not friendly," Hayes said, her voice a low growl. "Grant, can you get that beacon offline? We need to shut it down before it attracts anything else." Grant swallowed, nodding as he hurried to the device. His hands trembled slightly as he began examining the controls, trying to make sense of the alien technology. "I'll do my best, but this is far beyond anything I've worked with." As Grant worked, the scraping sounds grew louder, closer. The team tightened their formation, scanning the darkness with growing unease. The atmosphere was thick with tension, every nerve on edge. Suddenly, the ground trembled, a low rumble resonating through the ship. The dormant machine stirred, its tendrils pulsing with a faint, eerie light. Grant backed away, his face pale. "It's activating. I don't know how, but something's triggered it. Fall back," Hayes ordered, but before they could move, the room was flooded with light. The tendrils writhed, the machine humming louder as it powered up. The alien symbols on the walls began to glow, pulsing in rhythm with the machine. Then, from the shadows, figures emerged, skeletal forms draped in decayed, tattered armor. Their eyes glowed with an unnatural light, their movements stiff but purposeful. The team opened fire, but the bullets passed through the figures as if they were made of mist. The forms advanced undeterred, their eyes locked on the intruders. "Ghosts," Connor whispered, his voice laced with fear. "They're not alive, they're echoes." "Hold your ground," Hayes commanded, her voice cutting through the rising panic. "Grant, shut it down! Now!" Grant frantically typed into his scanner, searching for a way to disrupt the beacon's energy flow. The machine's hum grew louder, the light from the symbols blinding as the figures closed in. Just as they reached the team, Grant found a sequence, a shutdown command hidden within the alien code. "Got it!" Grant shouted, slamming his hand on the control panel. The beacon emitted a piercing shriek, then fell silent. The light flickered and died, plunging the chamber back into darkness. The ghostly figures halted, their forms wavering before dissolving into nothingness. The silence returned, oppressive and suffocating. The team stood motionless, hearts pounding in their chests. Hayes took a deep breath, her voice steady despite the adrenaline surging through her veins. "Let's get back to the Vanguard," she said. "We have what we came for. Whatever happened here, it's not our fight." As they retraced their steps through the derelict, the warning from the signal echoed in their minds, clearer than ever, *, do not proceed. Death awaits beyond this point, *. But Hayes knew the truth now, death had already claimed this place long ago. All that remained were the echoes of the lost, waiting for the living to join them. The Vanguard's engines roared to life as the team made their hasty retreat from the derelict ship, leaving behind the spectral echoes that had haunted them. The oppressive darkness of space closed in around the ship as it pulled away from the ancient vessel, its haunting warning still echoing in the minds of the crew. Captain Mara Hayes stood on the bridge, eyes locked on the viewscreen displaying the drifting wreck. Dr. Elias Grant, still shaken from their encounter, was at her side, his fingers tapping nervously on the console. The silence between them was heavy, filled with unspoken fears. "We need to send a report to command," Hayes finally said, breaking the tension. "They need to know what we found, or rather, what found us." Grant nodded, but his gaze remained fixed on the derelict ship. "Do you think they'll listen?" he asked, his voice laced with doubt. "Or will they just send another team to investigate, thinking we missed something?" Hayes frowned, her jaw tightening. "They'll listen if they know what's good for them. We barely got out of there alive. Whatever that thing was, it's not something we should be tampering with." Lieutenant Connor entered the bridge, his expression grim. "Captain, I've been going through the data we recovered. There's something unsettling." He hesitated, glancing at Grant before continuing. "The beacon wasn't just sending a warning, it was transmitting coordinates. And those coordinates lead deeper into uncharted space." Hayes stiffened, her instincts screaming danger. "What kind of coordinates?" Connor pulled up the data on the main screen, revealing a star map with a single point marked far beyond known space. "It's an invitation," he said quietly. "Or a trap." Grant's face strained of color. "We can't go there, Captain. Whatever's waiting at those coordinates, it's not meant for us. It's something ancient, something that should stay buried." Hayes turned to the screen, her eyes narrowing. "But what if it's a threat to more than just us? If we don't investigate, someone else will. And they might not be as lucky as we were." Connor shifted uncomfortably. "With all due respect, Captain, we barely survived the first encounter. Going deeper could be suicide." Hayes considered his words, weighing the risks against her duty. The responsibility of command pressed heavily on her shoulders. "We can't ignore this," she said at last. "If there's even a chance that this threat could spread, we need to contain it. We're going in." Grant looked at her, disbelief in his eyes. "You're seriously considering this? After what we just saw?" Hayes met his gaze, her voice steady. "I am. Because if we don't, we might be dooming more than just ourselves." Connor sighed, resigning himself to the decision. "I'll prepare the jump coordinates, but we need to be ready for anything. This could be a one-way trip." The Vanguard's engines powered up, the hum of the ship intensifying as the coordinates were locked in. The crew braced themselves for the unknown, tension thick in the air. As the ship entered hyperspace, the view outside the windows blurred into streaks of light, giving the impression of plunging into an endless abyss. Minutes stretched into hours as they hurtled toward the coordinates, the sense of impending doom growing with every passing moment. Hayes paced the bridge, her thoughts racing. She couldn't shake the feeling that they were walking into a trap, one laid eons before humanity had even existed. Finally, the Vanguard dropped out of hyperspace, arriving at the designated point in space. What they found was not a planet or a star, but an enormous structure, a vast, mechanical monolith suspended in the void, its surface covered in the same alien symbols they had seen on the derelict ship. The structure pulsed with a faint, ominous light, as if it were alive. The crew stared in awe and fear, realizing the magnitude of what they had discovered. This was no mere outpost, this was a gateway, a portal to something far beyond their understanding. Suddenly, alarms blared throughout the ship. "Captain, we're being pulled in!" Connor shouted, frantically trying to regain control. "Some kind of gravitational field. It's too strong!" Hayes gripped the armrest of her chair, her heart pounding. "Full reverse! Get us out of here, now!" But it was too late. The Vanguard was drawn inexorably toward the monolith, the ship's engines straining against the immense force. The light from the structure intensified, filling the bridge with an eerie glow. As they neared the portal, a sense of dread washed over them, as if they were approaching the threshold of a nightmare. "Brace for impact!" Hayes shouted, but there was no time. The ship was engulfed in light, and everything went white. For a moment, there was nothing, no sound, no sensation, just an overwhelming emptiness. Then, gradually, the light faded, and the bridge came back into focus. The crew looked around, disoriented but unharmed. The view screen flickered, revealing a sight that defied explanation. They were no longer in familiar space. Beyond the ship stretched an endless expanse of twisted stars and swirling energy, a place where the laws of physics seemed to break down. And in the distance, something immense stirred, an ancient presence, vast and malevolent, aware of their arrival. Hay's voice trembled as she spoke. "We've crossed a line we can't come back from." The presence shifted, its attention fixed on them. A low, resonant hum filled the ship, growing louder as the presence drew closer. The crew felt it in their bones, a sense of doom, as if they had awakened something that should have remained asleep. Grant whispered the words they were all thinking. "We should never have come here." As the hum reached a crescendo, the screen went dark, and the presence made itself known. The Vanguard was enveloped in shadow, and the last sound heard was a single, resonant pulse, like a heartbeat, then silence.